That's better.
Oh, that was loud. See, we're on the air.
That's better.
We are on the air on Spreaker. Now, where is my...
Now, let's get the camera rolling.
Streaming on Spreaker. Post to Facebook. Okay, I will. Hello, Spreaker. This is a test. GrokTALK, live from Concord, New Hampshire.
Saturday morning.
We have never actually used this feature before because until last week, we didn't have a way to bring the sound from the entire pile of equipment we have in front of me back into my laptop to stream it out to Spreaker. So now we do, and this is that. So welcome to the program. We officially start at 9 a.m. This is what we like to call the pre-show. And I'm going to go find this so I can share it. Share it. Copy. And I'm still working on it. So it's a new experience. Hopefully it works out.
It's always helpful.
Carly Fiorina will be on the show today. Max Abramson has had a break in his self-defense case. He's going to come in and talk to us about that.
Yep.
I got to push another button here and find out how much music I have left on this. Okay. And Kevin Bloom, we'll be giving him a call. He's going to give us an update on some legislation, SB 30, that would allow the Balsams bailout and probably a lot of other chaos and nastiness. We'll have a quick chat with him about that.
Crony capitalism.
We were unable to get Pete and Jemmy, who is at the First in the Nation Summit. We did try. And where am I going with this?
Come on, Ustream. You're the last thing I need. Everything else has shown up and is willing to work.
This is a... Oops, I'm in cap locks. That's crazy stuff there. This is a test. Live streaming audio on Spreaker. I should get Mike to go check that out. Oh, my music is fading. Look at that.
That means we have to talk more, huh?
Oh, yes. We can't just let the music do the business for us.
No. Well, we're still waiting for Ustream to come up so we can live video stream. And if you're interested, if you are listening on Spreaker already, but you want to see us in live TV, we should have Ustream up pretty shortly. As long as
figure out how to...
I need to throw some caffeine into the Ustream.
There is a way. There's a way for me to embed this, and I have to find it. Where are you?
Yeah, which also means...
there we are. Now...
do you want me to start up my... I'm going to have to reconfigure this laptop, but Shoutcast?
We can get to that. We don't have to do it this week, but I think we should look at that moving forward at some point because a lot of people will broaden our audience.
Okay.
So
we can do that.
I'm going to update the streaming post to include the audio stream and the video stream. So you can choose between the two. I note that the audio stream does not have any commercials in it except for the ones that we broadcast, so you won't be interrupted. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't watch us on video instead. So, but you can choose.
Now, let's try to wake up Ustream once again. Hopefully this time will be better.
Sometimes the pre-show is very lively, and today it's not because we're busy doing all this stuff.
Yeah, this is a techie pre-show.
Yep.
Ustream is having
a rough morning. I think it was out late last night.
Yeah, we're hoping. Come on, give me my login screen.
Live stream. Okay. Where are we here? Paste. See what that looks like. Preview changes.
Preview changes?
I want to see what this looks like now that I've added the Ustream, the Spreaker, audio stream on the same post as the video. It doesn't look too bad.
Oh, good.
It's getting a little long, though. So that's okay. And let's update this. And we are almost ready to start the show. 4 minutes away.
I'm just waiting on Ustream.
Update. All right, here we go. Do. So we're playing around with it. If it sounds a little weird, if you think it if you're hearing something either on the Spreaker stream or on the Ustream, please email us or tweet us or something. Skip at granitegrok.com.
Well,
Steve
actually,
at
you,
granitegrok.com.
because I don't have my other
you don't have it up.
laptop.
So email me, Steve at granitegrok.com. I may not see that. Try tweeting at NHSTEVEMACD, Steve McD, and I will hopefully see that if you are getting a really, really strange audio signal. And we want to make sure that you have the best experience possible. So I'm going to go back to the console here. I have to go start this so we can record. All right, that button's pushed. We're good there. Too many buttons. And I got all these buttons over here. So, and you can see some of those buttons if you watch the video when that comes up. But
well, this is the third trying to get Ustream to connect.
yeah, it's some mornings, it's always technical. You patch all this stuff together, you get everything to work. Somehow we manage every week to put out a pretty decent show. And before that, though, there's always something going on, like I can't get the Jazzler to play the music output correctly into the board, or I'm not getting a signal back, or we're having problems with Ustream, or so there's a little challenge to it, and we come in early to make sure all those things are working so that you get a decent program.
And this is driving me absolutely nuts.
And I have to make sure I turn Mike's mic up this week, because last week he was a little quiet. It wasn't his fault. It was my fault, because I'm playing with the board.
I'm never a little quiet.
Oh, wow. I'm not sure if that's you or me that's that loud.
No, that was me that loud that time. That's better.
Let me go look at the recording output.
I'm louder than you are, so you can turn me down a little bit.
Keep talking.
Turn me down. Oh, that's
You're
good.
going to have to turn that down, because I'm looking at this.
Okay, well, that's fine. No, set me to be the same as you, and then we'll, I'm not. It's not too loud in my headphones. It's just that I seem to be a bit louder than you.
I know. Well, last week, keep talking.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Last week,
let's
week it didn't sound right to me, and so anyway, I sounded really, really loud because I'm using this board, and I could barely hear you. You were in the room, and I'm like, I don't want it to. I want to balance it all out. I want everybody to sound the same. So that's what we're working on here. All right, so that's good. 2 minutes. Oh,
yeah.
1 minute.
There's no joy in Mudville right now.
No, well, we have audio live stream at least, so that people can listen if the Ustream isn't working.
Yeah.
I've only been trying to get this to work for half an hour now.
Half an hour. Yeah, absolutely. That's no word of a lie, my friend. No word of a lie. We are live on Spreaker.
I've been having some fun the last couple of days. I actually did take some time off, but it was more to get a little unwound and get prepared for tomorrow's event, the launch of the 603 Alliance. And
yes, for those of you who don't know, we will be there streaming.
It'll be
recording, interviewing.
Live Grok coverage with interviews, and it should be good. We've got a long list of speakers. Betsy McCoy will be kicking it off for us, and she's going to have a rousing speech on...
I'm going to cut you off, because I always do, because we're back in 5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
Welcome to GrokTALK. Hey, he got the live stream up just in time. April 18th, 2015. Everybody's in New Hampshire this week for the First in the Nation Summit. Tomorrow is the 603 Alliance. It's a grassroots deal, and we're going to be there live, and we're going to be doing the program. We have Max Abramson here to talk about changes in his case. He just walked in the door. Skip Murphy, of course, is with us. Mike Rogers is at the end of the table. Carly Fiorina will be our guest today on the phone for a short segment. And we're going to try to get Kevin Bloom on the phone as well. Plenty to talk about, all kinds of things going on. Let me turn Mike's mic on before he tries to say anything. And we'd like to welcome you to GrokTALK.
That'll never happen.
No, it happens every week. I always forget somebody's microphone. I have even more buttons and things to push. I got to figure out which headset you're on.
We got to get this stuff under software control.
Talk. Nope, that's not you. Hang on. Try that one.
Yep, that's me.
Oh, hey, all right, Max is with us. So,
Okay.
welcome to GrokTALK. This is our.
The boards are maxed out, and so are Steve's fingers. There's at least 3 places for every 2 fingers at this point.
Plus,
No, not quite.
I got a bunch of
maxed
stuff
out.
going on my desktop, my laptop too now. So this is our maiden live stream voyage on Spreaker. So we'd like to welcome our Spreaker listeners to the show. This is episode 93 or 94. I'm losing track of GrokTALK, and
You have to sit up. You're on camera.
It's show number 94.
slouching. Oh, thank you. Good, because it's in the Google Calendar, but I'm not in the Google Calendar.
Yes.
All right, so tons of stuff going on. But I want to start with Max because we've had Max on many times over his self-defense case, and there's been some developments recently in your press release regarding that, and I think we'll start with that, and then we have Jorge Mesa Tejada on at 9:15 to talk about education. I got to give you his phone number, unless you have it in front of you on the calendar, and then you can just give it to him.
I do have the calendar.
All right,
yes.
see if it's in there. I think I dropped it in there. Oh, we have it. Okay, great. Anyway, let's talk about your case, because this is really, I don't know, this is important.
I went to the mailbox yesterday. The mailbox was stuffed, and there was something finally a response from the Rockingham Superior Court, and the judge denied every single issue that I brought up asking for a new trial, except for one. Now, back at Lorry Materials, we just had a bill on Lorry Materials, SB 72, which I'll get to in a minute, but the police officers, if the police department has evidence of acts of dishonesty, theft, fraud, perjury, tampering with evidence, they have to turn that over to the county attorney's office so that the county attorney can submit that to the defense upon request. I requested Lorry Materials before my trial on those officers because I knew about incidents like the Bergeron beating beforehand. I knew about theft from the Toy Bank Fund and Gun Range Fund and padding overtime sheets and various instances where they'd light on the stand to get people put in jail who hadn't done anything wrong. They'd just spoken out against some officer or the police chief or the police department. And so I put in a request for Lorry Materials, and the county prosecutor, Patricia Conway, who's now county attorney, unfortunately, and she's been nabbed for firing Bouchard, who blew the whistle on the fact that she was using her position as assistant county attorney to bury Lorry Materials for her husband. So everything kind of comes back to the Lorry Materials issue. Dishonest acts by officers being covered up. And what the judge has said in his motion or his decision is essentially that he needs to see the police chief's report. He needs to see the official reports. He needs to see that information. But we know based on the news coverage of it, and we certainly know based on the video, that they lied about what happened. The entire police department knew about it. 2 of the officers were fired. One's being prosecuted right now. And the other officer is actually suing the town of Seabrook to get his job back. Or not to get his job back, I think just to get back pay. I don't think he even wants his job back. But now everyone in town wants him gone because once this case came out, once that video came out, and he had to be put on paid administrative leave, which is essentially a very long 6-month paid vacation. A lot of other instances where Officer Laurent, who's the cop who's looking up at the camera smiling, there are instances where he's kicked people in the groin and done other terrible things to people, and this is unfortunately turns out to have been a very long pattern of abuse by some of these officers.
Karma.
Comes back to get you.
Yes. When you're good to people, oftentimes it can rebound for the good for you. And when you're bad, it's lights out.
The downside is we just had a Republican, his work schedule changed, Republican from my district, Dennis Sweeney, who I thought was a very good Republican, but his work schedule changed and he was not able to make it up to the State House, so he did the honorable thing. He's resigning. Unfortunately, that means that we now have a special election, and once again, Mark Preston, the Seabrook officer who was a drunk driver for many years, finally got caught. He crashed into a parked Kia, hit it so hard that he rammed it into another parked vehicle and sent both drivers to the hospital with injuries. And then he threw his badge onto the onto the passenger seat and walked away and stumbled back to towards Seabrook. And he was the one who was on the news arguing with other police officers who were arresting him, saying, "You're going to ruin my career? What about the Brotherhood? If this were Seabrook, we'd take care of you guys."
If we were in Seabrook, we'd be taking care of you guys. Well, there's sort of the mask dropping from the face. He confirms what a lot of people oftentimes think, that the police will protect each other. It is a brotherhood, and they do a bad job. It's a bad job a lot of times, dealing with basically the riffraff and the worst of society. You can become a little jaded. I can understand. But, that doesn't mean that you get to do that. Those kinds of things where he could say, if this was in Seabrook, we would protect you. That's not what this is all about. Unfortunately, as we've been posting about, we see this more and more from public officials or our public servants who have turned around and said, no, we are going to be the public masters one way or another. And it just drives us.
Lord Byron Acton is famous for his quotes, and his most famous quote of all time is, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. When police officers have absolute power to file completely bogus criminal charges against you, write up the reports, handle the witnesses, handle the evidence, go to court, lie about what happened, and get away with it, and send people to prison," and they've done this in Seabrook a few times, just based on their own actions alone, they have absolute power. Now, you take an ordinary person, you or me, if we had absolute power to just take some pedestrian down and just stick them in prison, or take someone you just don't like and just put them in prison. You give someone absolute arbitrary power to make someone's life miserable. Just having the power to do that can corrupt someone. I think Thomas Jefferson was the one who said that once someone casts a longing eye on public office, it begins to work some blackness and corruption in your heart.
Well, there was another, and I was going to propose this as a WTF moment, but there is that the head of ICE, when testifying in front of a House, and I don't have it in front of me, and I apologize, but in dealing with one of the House committees on immigration, because that's what ICE happens to do, it came out that the agents out on the border and everywhere else, the active agents who deal with illegal aliens and immigration and all that other stuff, were being told, you will obey not the law, but Obama's directives. And think about that for a moment. We supposedly tout ourselves as being the rule of law. Similar with what you're talking about right now, Max, about the police. Well, if they're obeying their own code and not obeying the law, if ICE has been told, agents, you will obey Obama's directives, even if they run counter to the law at the risk of your job, what is going on with this country? I think this is one of the biggest transformations that Obama promised, that we're going to become under the thumb of the king instead of under the rule of law. We're seeing this on campus with this sexual assault type stuff, where the whole idea of due process under the law is being thrown out the window from the Federal Department of Education, Title 10 or Title 9, whichever one that is, of just making colleges the judge, jury, and executioner for what should be felony in the courts. So, this is just one more linchpin, Max, that you're bringing to us.
Now, there's another issue that I brought up, which was ineffective assistance of counsel. One of the things that my attorney did not do was demand a probable cause hearing. He waived it. Now, normally, if you waive your probable cause hearing, you're waiving it with the prosecutor in exchange for an agreement to get the police reports and photos and everything that they have in discovery. And it turns out it is catastrophic if you do not get access to that, and it certainly was catastrophic in my case. My attorney just, on his own, Adam Mackler, decided to just waive the probable cause hearing. Now, there's a bill that I testified on. No, I didn't testify. I sent the message in. They asked people to just send their testimony in writing, so I did. in front of the Judiciary Committee. It's SB 124, and it sounds like a great streamlining bill that cuts the process from 14 months down to 12 months and saves a little bit of time. But it saves a little bit of time by getting rid of the probable cause hearing. Now, in a self-defense case, you might need a probable cause hearing. 85% of the time they waive it. But the other 15% of the time when the defense attorney does not waive the PC hearing, you need it. You need that information. You need to get witnesses on the stand. You need to lock them into their testimony. You need to get the transcript from that and introduce it at trial to show, look, this witness is changing their story. Here's why. Then they talk to their own attorney. They talk to other criminals in their little gang. They came up with their own little story. They changed their story because of this or that. You need to have that probable cause hearing. In a self-defense case, it's absolutely critical. And what they're talking about is leaving the decision up to the judge. So it's called Felonies First, SB 124. If it passes in its current form, the judge can just say, well, I don't think we need a PC hearing in this case. So the main intent is to start felony processes, since they're going to go to the Superior Court anyway, started in the Superior Court, which makes sense in most of the state. The problem is, it works. I'm sure it would work fine for Hillsborough or Stratford County. It doesn't work very well in rural counties, Cheshire or Coos County, because it's too long a drive for these small police departments to go all the way to the Superior Courthouse just for a PC hearing. But the problem is, the judge can just say, well, I don't believe in PC hearings, so you're not going to get one. And now the defense no longer has something to bring against the prosecutor to say, hey, you need to turn over the police reports now. You need to turn over the witness statements and photos and audio recording and what you have right now, or we're going to demand a PC hearing, and we're going to, at your expense, we're going to have a probable cause hearing to get that information out of them.
All right, we are ready to call Jorge. Max is staying with us because we want to keep talking about this, but we have a couple of guests we're going to squeeze in. Jorge Mesa Tejada is going to give us an education update. You have the number?
I have the number.
Outstanding. All right, we are going to take a really, really, really short break, long enough to make a phone call, and we'll be right back with our education update. You guys just stay tuned.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Welcome back to GrokTALK. Coming up in the next segment, Carly Fiorina. But right now, we have Jorge Mesa Tejada for education. Good morning, Jorge. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Excellent. Great to have you on. So what's our subject this week, sir?
Okay, I thought we would talk about something that everyone uses, but no one knows really what it is. SAUs.
Oh, yeah.
The School Administrative Units.
Now, are those just like a New England thing or a New Hampshire thing, or are those everywhere?
They are only indigenous to Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine.
Okay.
They're only in the 3 states.
So to our listeners outside of this area, you will not understand what an SAU is until Jorge explains it to you. Go ahead.
Okay, and they were founded around around 1919, thereabouts, to help the Commissioner of Education get a hold of what was happening in the many school districts in the state, in New Hampshire specifically. For instance, Hampstead had 8 school districts for a town of basically 800 people. And the reason for that was that schools in those days were run by churches. So each school became a school district. Okay, so the poor commissioner who had to report to the governor as to the status of schools once a year couldn't do it, couldn't travel to all those places. So they came up with the idea of, in those days it was called school supervisory union. And the purpose of them were to provide administrative services that would be too expensive for any one district to pay for. And so spread the cost between several districts. And so they created a mandatory marriage of districts made by the State Board of Education of school districts in the state. Right now, there are 98 SAUs in New Hampshire. Now, so listen to the name. It's a school administrative unit. It's not an instructional unit. Every school district has to belong to it, but the SAU cannot mandate anything on the school district.
And that's under New Hampshire law, correct?
Right. The school districts choose a superintendent who is the head of the SAU, but when he is acting, when he's talking to any individual school district, he's talking to them as their superintendent, not as the head of the SAU.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the way it was intended to be, and it was that way for many years. But lately, it has become that the SAU itself is telling the districts what to do, and that's illegal. And unfortunately, the people, the voters, and especially the school board members, don't have the foggiest as to what their rights and responsibilities are as school board members, and let the superintendent run all over them. To wit what is happening in Berlin, if you have been following that.
Jorge?
Yes.
Yeah, isn't this sort of in the same vein that we see more and more our elected officials and basically the citizenship bowing to the authority of quote-unquote the professionals? I see this with the select boards where the town administrator is oftentimes the de facto head instead of the select board until really push comes to shove. Obviously, I've seen it in my hometown with the school board, where the superintendent basically does exactly what you're saying. They tell the school board what to do, along with the New Hampshire School Board Association. And I hate to say it, but the school board members just seem to be patsies for both of those two entities.
You got it right. You hit it right on the head. What really happens is that superintendent, in this case, takes the lead in any discussion. And because, quote, he's the superintendent, he takes over the meeting and starts telling the voters, his bosses, how the law is going to be. He interprets the law. And because the school board members are totally ignorant of what their rights, responsibilities, and duties are, they simply agree. So what happens is the superintendent becomes a head and school board by default. And you've seen it happen in Gilbert. You've seen it happen in other places. And here in Timberlane, you have a guy that came from
Timberlane.
Quincy. Well, in Quincy, where a superintendent, in fact, is law, and he's just telling the school board to go fly a kite. He has the chairman of the school board sign contracts and all that. We have the vote of the school board, and to him it is okay. And if anyone questions him, he simply says, "Well, I have the authority to do it, and no one questions him."
Oh, and he calls the police too.
Yeah, and if he pushes, and if the member pushes, he gets him arrested. Yeah, and no one does anything. So the idea of the school administrative unit was a good one when it began, because it provided transportation services, food services, special education in those days. Okay, now, and maintenance. Now, special education, you have a director in each school district. Maintenance, you have a director in each school district. About the only thing they do now is transportation coordination. And then, of course, the paper mill that they call the SAU. So the need for an SAU is getting less and less, especially in the age of computers. It used to be a paper mill, but it's no longer that because you have it on computers. But now what they are doing is, even though it's all electronic, you saw what is happening in Timberlane. And they're claiming that 91A gives them the right to decide what to give out, which is false. They charge people for electronic files. And then they said, this is our file. meaning the SAU. No, it's not. It's the district's public file. So that is the problem we have with the school administrative units. And unless school board members wake up and assert their duty and responsibilities, I don't know where we're going with this. We might as well do away with the school board. Why go through this charade?
Well, this is where the New Hampshire School Board Association tends to step in, because when they offer orientation to new school board members, and unfortunately I lost my race, otherwise I would have loved to have been at this orientation, they tell people, listen to your superintendent. So that subordinate position of the elected officials who are supposed to be in charge right from the get-go is subverted by the folks that our taxes pay their dues.
Not only that, it is more insidious than that. The last time that I was in the school board, it was in 1990 to 94. They had this, what they call school board orientation at the New Hampshire School Boards Association. So I didn't want to go, but I said, let me go find out what the heck is going on. And they handed you a little book, a handbook for school board members. And the first one was the 10 Commandments for school board members. The first one, thou shalt not embarrass your superintendent in public.
Wow.
You mean I'm his boss and I cannot say anything, asking him about anything?
How do we fix this, Jorge? Is there a way? Is there a path? Is there a
remedy?
A remedy, yes.
Yes, there is a remedy, but I don't think you're going to find the incumbents.
Well, that's certainly true in my district with Sue Allen.
Right. You have to groom a set of voters who are willing to run and be elected to the school board, and train them on their powers and responsibilities before they become school board members. So when they hit the ground, they hit the ground running and know exactly what their responsibilities are, and are willing to assert the lawful responsibility. Because that's another thing. We could take all the school members that we know and take them to court for dereliction of duty. They swore to uphold the laws of the state of New Hampshire. And the state of New Hampshire tells the school board that you shall run the schools. Shall run the schools. They don't do it. They let the superintendent do it. Why? Because, as you know, New Hampshire law is just an enabling statute. And then what counts are the administrative rules.
I'm watching Max nod.
And what are the administrative rules? That's what the Democrat writes. All the professional staffers at the Department of Education. And so they have been giving the superintendent more and more power. And because no one goes to the rules hearings and the 503, then they pass it. So then you're saddled with that. So,
I think you've hit another nail directly on the head, Jorge, and it's very insidious to our republic, which is the rise of the administrative state. We talk about it more in terms of the federal government, with all of these agencies writing all the laws, and in some cases, like with the EPA, becoming judge, jury, and executioner.
Exactly, because they're not elected.
Right. And, this is just another example of it at the local level, where we should be able to say, enough of it is enough. But have we, as the American people, gotten to the point where we just say, let government do it, and we turn our backs on what should be each and every one of us, our responsibility? And how do we change that in this area of the modern bread and circus on TV or popular culture or whatever?
They may make you suffer even stronger.
Oh, thank you.
There is another group that is helping the cause, and that's called the New Hampshire School Boards Association, that we pay from our school budgets annually based, a fee based on the number of students. No recourse. We have to pay it. And they have a service, in quotes, for the districts to provide examples of policies and to revise policies. And what they have been doing is where before it says, for instance, agendas for school board meetings. The chairman of the school board used to read this. The chairman of the school board shall define the agenda for every meeting, and the superintendent shall promulgate. And now it says the superintendent shall prepare the agenda for every meeting.
Wow.
Okay, so and now that converts now into participation, public participation in meetings, where before, you have the public opinion meetings about 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and at the end, where each person can talk up to 3 minutes or so, and then you can talk about any item you want, and not to exceed 3 minutes. And if you go over the limit, you have to be asked to leave. Well, now they're saying that the revision that was put in front of the Hampshire School Board last week was to say that any member, by the way, you could talk about anything. Now we will propose to say, any item on the agenda that a person and the member of the public wants to discuss must be vetted by the superintendent 8 days prior to the meeting.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
Yes,
that nice?
And I think I've written about a couple things like that at watchdog.org. Jorge, we're out of time. We only have a couple seconds left. I wanted to thank you very much for taking some of your Saturday morning to spend it with us, and I look forward to our conversation next month.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
All right, thank you very much, sir. I didn't turn
Okay, bye.
There we
get rid
go.
of the SAUs.
Yeah, we do. We need to. We need to do. Somebody will do that. We need to do something to fix this, whatever that is. This is GrokTALK. We'll be right back with Carly Fiorina. Stay tuned.
Okay, she's calling.
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
"There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change."
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. You're listening to GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
All right, we're back. GrokTALK. Steve McDonald, Mike Rogers, Skip Murphy, Max Abramson's with us. And we have on the phone with us...
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
Hey, how you doing? Carly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. How are you doing?
Good to have you here. We only have a short segment, so I'm going to avoid all that segue intro stuff we usually do and get right to the questions. I had asked a couple people if they wanted me to ask you anything specific, and the question that came up most frequently was Common Core. People wanted to know what your stand was on that.
Well, I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea because we've pretty conclusively demonstrated that the Department of Education getting bigger and bigger is not helping the quality of our education. I mean, the Department of Education has been costing us more money for decades, and the quality of our education continues to deteriorate. There are people who will say that Common Core is just a set of standards. It's not intended to be a heavy-handed bureaucratic program, but federal bureaucracies only know one way. It's called heavy-handed. And once you have a national set of standards, then you have a national push to test to the standards, to teach to the standards. And, of course, behind the Common Core standards are a set of companies who tend and stand to benefit from those standards. They're testing companies, they're textbook companies. So I think it's a really bad idea. We need to return to what we know is most important in a child's education, an involved parent and a good teacher, which means we have to give parents as many choices as possible. We need to make sure that teachers are held accountable. You know, one of the things that New Hampshire has done that I think is really smart is give people an education tax exemption, and it includes every form of educational option, including homeschooling. That's the way to do it. Give parents a choice, hold teachers accountable, and push the involvement in education to as close to the local level as possible.
This is Skip, and I want to say thanks for coming on as well, Carly. We are very constitutionally oriented here at Granite Grok, but I think this is a question I can ask you that I can't ask most of your presumed opponents in the Republican primary here. You ran a large organization, $90 billion when you left HP. So you're quite well versed in how bureaucracies, whether they be public or private, tend to grow. That's what bureaucracies do, and they issue all kinds of rules and statutes and all of that stuff. My question for you is, one of the big bugaboos that conservatives have is that we are basically moving at a very rapid rate from where our elected representatives legislate the laws to one where most laws are being written by the administrators in the executive branch. What is your stance on that, and depending on what your answer is, what is your remedy if you were elected president?
Yeah, well, first, I think you're absolutely right. Bureaucracies naturally grow bigger. Bureaucracies also turn in on themselves. They forget who they are there to serve. And so, you have a Veterans Administration, a giant bureaucracy where veterans have to fill out paperwork and bureaucrats check paperwork, and then bureaucrats to decide if a veteran gets an appointment or not. It's a giant bureaucracy, and it has forgotten who it's there to serve. One of the things that, by the way, we have a lot of managers in the political class who are working within that system. And in addition to working within that system, they also are being influenced by people who stand to gain from that system. And the people who stand to gain from big, bureaucratic, complicated government are big, powerful companies. And so, you see Obamacare that is written by drug companies and health insurance companies. You see Dodd-Frank written by a lot of the big Wall Street banks, and now we've destroyed 3,000 community banks. So it just creates a huge problem of ever-growing bureaucracy, crony capitalism, more and more complexity and corruption, and therefore the small, the powerless, the weak are getting crushed, and you see that in the data. So one of the things that I think has to happen is we have to elect leaders in the White House who are prepared to change the order of things for the better, are prepared to actually challenge the system because they haven't lived in it their entire political lives. But I also think we need to engage citizenry like never before. So what does that mean? I think first we go to zero-based budgeting so that we literally know where every single dollar is being spent. We don't know, and we don't argue over the trillions of dollars being spent. We just argue once a year over the rate of increase of one government agency or another. Second, we begin repealing massive pieces of legislation because we have to reduce complexity. We have to repeal a whole set of things. Third, we have to engage citizens. Technology allows us to do this. One of the other things I think we have to do is go to a pay-for-performance system. I mean, literally, we have an IG report every 3 months that tells us you can watch pornography all day long as a federal government employee and earn the same pay, pension, and benefits as somebody who's trying to do a good job. That's outrageous. It's outrageous.
Carly,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I want to see if I can pinpoint this. With Obamacare, we saw just hundreds of times when the legislation said the Secretary of Health and Human Services shall determine
That's
this
right.
and shall determine this. Would you, if you were to run and if you were elected, would you tell Congress, you need to do the job instead of passing it off to us? I will veto this legislation because you're not doing the hard work of making all the hard decisions. I'm supposed to execute the law, not make the law. Would you be in a position or of a state of mind to actually tell Congress, by vetoing, go back and do your job right?
I absolutely would, but I would add to it. I would also require Congress to post every proposed piece of legislation. I would require every agency to post every proposed piece of regulation on the Internet for absolutely everyone to see. I would require them to leave it there for a reasonable comment period. I would draw citizens' attention to it, and I would ask them to vote on it. Do you think this is a good idea or not? Technology permits people to vote for American Idol once a week. We can put technology in people's hands so that they can vote on proposed legislation and regulation.
Yeah, the problem is people tend to watch American Idol and not watch the legislation, unfortunately.
Well, maybe it's because they think their vote doesn't matter. You know, there are a bunch of people disengaged from the political process, not because they don't care, but because they look at what's gone on over years and years and years, and they say, you know what, it never changes. It doesn't matter what I do. People forget the Tea Party was formed under President George W. Bush, not under President Barack Obama.
Good. So, Carly, this is Mike. I greatly appreciate your thoughts about cutting down the bureaucracy and making Congress do the work that they're supposed to do, which, by the way, is one of my main preferences. But you've led a large company with a large bureaucracy, and it's always, as you say, tricky to get the bureaucracy to shrink. And at the end of the day, it's about customer service. Unlike the VA, if, say, Hewlett-Packard isn't nimble, the customers will go buy their printers or computers somewhere else. So have you actually cut a bureaucracy, and how, and do you have the experience that you can bring to the White House to make that happen?
Well, yes, I have. I've cut many bureaucracies, and you're absolutely right. The first thing you need to do to actually transform and cut a bureaucracy down to size is know where you're spending money. And that's why zero-based budgeting is so important. We need to know where our money is being spent. Secondly, you need to tackle the known places where there exists fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption. Every single year, there is a report issued in excruciating detail of hundreds upon hundreds of billions of dollars of wasted money, and no one does anything about it. We know where this is. We just don't do anything about it. Third, you have to engage the people who are supposed to be served. So, one of the things that I did early on in Hewlett-Packard is I went and talked to customers and customer service people. And the interesting thing is people who are at the tip of the spear, customers who are being served or those people trying to serve them, they know what's wrong. They know what's wrong. They're just never asked. So, I've talked about the VA. You know what I would do? In addition to making sure that all senior executive servants could be fired if they weren't doing the job, not just top 400 in the VA, I would ask 10 veterans of about 25 years of age, tell us how you want to be served. Give us the blueprint for how we deliver services to you. And that would give us a destination towards which to move a bureaucracy.
That's wonderful.
Thank you for being on the show. This is Representative Max Abramson.
How are you, sir?
Doing very well this morning. Beautiful weather. Finally, we're getting spring weather. There are two issues in my district, Hampton Falls and Seabrook. We're down on the seacoast. There are two issues in my district that I hear about over and over and over again. One, of course, is Common Core, which you mentioned. The other is Obamacare. How would you convince undecided independent voters of the need to repeal Obamacare?
Well, I think first we have to recognize that Obamacare was sold to the American people on a false premise. The false premise, for example, was that you can't get insurance coverage if you have a pre-existing condition. And in New Hampshire, just as an example, high-risk pools exist where people can, in fact, be covered if they have a pre-existing condition. I know how important that is. I'm a cancer survivor. So this problem has been solved at the state level in many, many states, in New Hampshire and California and many others. Secondly, the legislation itself, Obamacare, is longer than a Harry Potter novel. And it's not nearly as interesting, so nobody read it. And in addition to that Harry Potter novel, there are now 30,000 plus pages of accompanying regulation. In other words, this thing is so complicated. Nobody understands it. And so the reality of that is that hospitals are consolidating to deal with it. Insurance companies are consolidating to deal with it. And by the way, the dirty little secret of Obamacare is that insurance companies and drug companies help to write it. It's called crony capitalism. And so we have to repeal this thing.
They did, but it still came back to bite them because they got cheated.
Well, that's right. Well, that's right. Everybody got cheated, but most importantly, the American people got cheated. And so we have to repeal it because you can't tinker around the edges of that much complexity. We need to make sure that people are covered with pre-existing conditions. That's been done successfully at the state level. We need to be sure that people have access to quality, affordable health care. And, of course, in New Hampshire, Obamacare has taken away access for so many people to their doctors and their hospitals. And finally, I think in the health insurance market, we should try the one thing we have never tried. We've never tried real competition, where companies have to serve customers. Because the health insurance market for 100 years has been a regulated industry where health insurance companies and regulators get together and decide on the rules of the road. Customers are best served when people actually have to compete for their business.
Carly, we're running to the end of the segment here. I want to first invite you back because we'd love to have you in the studio or even get you on the phone for a longer segment in the future if we can do that.
Well, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
My closing question is, what would your advice be, whether it's you or somebody else, to the Republicans and the Republican Party on how to compete and win the next presidential election?
Well, I will just say I think you have to know who we're up against. And we're up against Hillary Clinton. We must beat her. Hillary Clinton desperately wants to talk about becoming the first woman president. Hillary Clinton desperately wants to talk about the war on women. Hillary Clinton desperately does not want to talk about her track record, her accomplishments or lack thereof, her lack of candor and transparency over Benghazi or Emailgate or all the rest. If she faces me on a general election stage, she cannot talk about becoming the first woman president. She can't talk about the war on women. She will be forced to play on the ground of her accomplishments, her track record, her capability and character for leadership. And on that ground, I will win.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking time to talk to us. We will reach out to different individuals to try to arrange that next interview.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you, gentlemen.
All right. You have a great weekend.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. That was Carly Fiorina. We are going to take a very short break, and we will be right back to continue the discussion on GrokTALK.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Welcome back to GrokTALK. Thank you very much to Carly Fiorina for spending some time with us. Of course, Max Abramson's here. Mike Rogers, Skip Murphy. I am Steve McDonald. We are Grok Talk, coming to you live from Concord, New Hampshire, now on Spreaker and Ustream. And we would like to thank the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers at cnht.org for allowing us to use the space to bring you this broadcast almost every week. And we're going to move on to our next segment. We have something to show you first. Skip's going to...
It's feminist of the week.
Okay, let me turn your microphone on
Yeah,
so you can
it's
talk.
our WTF, What the Feminist, for the week. An unusual endorsement for Hillary Clinton. No news yet whether the campaign approves or accepts the endorsement.
They might not approve the message. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, the hookers for Hillary from the Bunny Ranch out in Las Vegas. They're all raring to get going for Hillary.
So there you go.
I am not going to say another word.
A bunch of warring women.
A bunch of warring women. Hookers for Hillary has a nice ring to it, though.
It does.
And I could see, they should change that H to the Hillary H, because I think that would look a lot better. Anyway, we're going to have Kevin...
That's kind of like a Y chromosome, right?
Yeah, we're going to have Kevin Bloom on around 10:30. We're going to give him a call. But until then, we have a lot of time to fill and plenty of objects of our attention to focus. Reminder, the 603 Alliance is tomorrow. Mike, fill us in, please. You have a list of guests and details. We want to make sure.
Let me pull up my guest list. We got
starts at 9 in the morning at the Crown Plaza at Nashua.
It does, and it's deliberately following on from the First in the Nation because we know a lot of people have come to Nashua for that. Some of them have taken hotel rooms. We want to make sure that it's easy for them to attend. We're looking to pull in as many conservative groups from around the state as we can and from a couple of neighboring states. The objective is quite simply to ensure that a conservative gets through the primary. As Richard Viguerie has said in his book Takeover, it's the primaries, stupid. So the purpose then is to get conservative organizations together, to bring in the presidential candidates, get the people to kick the shins, kick the tires, and vet the candidates. And towards the end of this year, in October, we will hold a caucus. You can't herd the cats. You can't dictate to the cats who they will support. You can only ask the cats to choose who they will support, the better brand of catnip, as it were. And so the purpose of the 603 Alliance, then, is first with the presidential race, because we are the first in the nation and the primary is very early, and then with state races to help to promote the conservative candidate and get agreement on who the conservatives are supporting instead of a split vote that guarantees that the moderate or the Democrat will
And this
win.
is really important because by the time we get to February, it's in February this year?
Yes.
Right now, until somebody else says, no, we're going to have our primary before yours, and then they move it, which does happen around here, but we have a law that says we have to be, 10 days before
10 days.
Any other actual primary. The Iowa caucus is the only thing that can happen before us. Anyway, this is really important
And
because there could be a large number of candidates running in this race, and a large number of people will stick to certain candidates early and really seriously dilute the vote, but that gives us an excellent opportunity because with that many people running and that many people voting for so many different people, any good bubble of votes that can be directed at a true conservative candidate has an excellent opportunity in this particular race to make a huge difference.
So unless Jeb Bush turns out to be way more conservative than we think, for example, or persuade people that he is, or Chris Christie maybe, the field is spread so wide and so thin here, as Steve says, if we can pull together a decent number of votes, we can actually avoid the possibility of the less conservative candidate winning with maybe 20% of the vote.
Yeah, it really comes down to about 25,000 votes. And, like I have been saying for years now, when we consider that the establishment GOP is oftentimes the enemy of the conservative, liberty and freedom wing of the party here, all we have to do is persuade a 0.5 to a 1.5% of the electorate in any one district, and we can move a race the way that we want to. And in essence, I think that's what we wish to do here with the 603 Alliance, is make that small move for a few votes that in the aggregate, in this race, a wide open race, it will push a given candidate closer to the top. And I don't think any of the conservative candidates have to win, but if they can do well being defined first, second, third, maybe fourth.
Yeah, I think so. And if especially if you can get a first or second place, it's a really good launching pad. And, there are some excellent candidates in the race this year with some very good points of view. We don't have to settle for same old. We don't have to settle for his or her turn, like the Democrats seem to be doing this year. And so, I'm going to borrow a phrase in a moment, which people will recognize. But so, we've pulled in the leaders of a bunch of conservative groups. We're now pulling in the members of a bunch of conservative and libertarian groups, or as many as we can get to this meeting. And we're hoping that by the time we get to our caucus, we'll have many of those members attending the caucus. And then we need to ripple out from there to the people they can influence to try and push enough of a block of votes to make a conservative candidate that's agreeable to the majority of us stand out. And so the tail end of the process is, and you're going to recognize this one, you're going to talk to your friends and neighbors about this election so that we win.
And you know who this whole process is going to tick off the most?
The same person who said that, I realize.
The Sununome.
Yes, and Jennifer Horn, who is now in her glory with the First in the Nation primary. You have to give credit where credit's due. They got a lot of people in. It's a big deal. So, that part of it.
And it brings a lot of national media attention. There's a lot of people here. It is. I mean, and she does deserve credit because this was her doing. It really was. I mean, she may have had help, obviously, but somebody had to say, yeah. And it's great. It's great to have all these candidates here for these 2 days. It really is.
The only problem I see, and I keep saying this over and over again, there is a distortion going on because as this is going on, there are very important issues going on at the State House, Max, and you and Guy Comtois and several others who come in to talk to us about this stuff. I mean, really good stuff. This tends to take the eye off of that stuff, which is this stuff's going to be around for a long time after the First in the Nation primary is done and over with. And in the real scheme of things, it's more important than the First in the Nation primary.
Well, the First in the...
Because Steve is always saying, screw D.C., save New Hampshire.
Well, yeah. Well, the First in the Nation primary is important because this is what brings out a lot of voters who normally don't pay attention to what's going on. This is our opportunity to attack Obamacare, Common Core, all these restrictive regulations that are hurting our fishermen out on the seacoast, that are hurting the tourism industry, all these anti-business regulations and mandates and laws, things that are going on in the State House. Now we can talk about SB 101, which we just passed through the State House and makes Common Core optional. It can no longer be forced down on school districts. It's the school board's decision now because we passed this unless Maggie vetoes it. There are all these issues going on at the state level that we can bring up during the presidential primary. And tomorrow's a great opportunity to bring up state issues that are also kind of national issues like Obamacare and Common Core, where it really affects people's health care, it affects people's kids, it affects their family, it affects their business, it affects their paycheck.
And they may not be aware yet how it does. I mean, I think people are beginning to become aware of how Obamacare is going to affect them because they just filed their taxes. But we want, in this next segment, we want to go through a bunch of legislation. We want to do the official legislative update. We want to spend a little bit more time on your case.
And the Ron Paul primary was terrific for New Hampshire. It's brought so many young people out who would never have paid attention. They would never have given politics a second thought. Now some of them are state representatives.
And it
that's
is
true.
And that's important because not just because it doesn't just bring them out as libertarians, it attracts them to politics as potential libertarians.
And constitutionalists.
And constitutionally, it gives them an opportunity to expose themselves to a wider range of issues. And, there's lots of libertarians who are conservatives, and there's lots of libertarians who are not. But, when we talk about shrinking the size of government, and that's huge. That's a huge issue, even at the state level. We are talking about budgets. We're talking about the argument the left is making is that we're cutting the budget. But the argument we're making, which is the correct argument, is that we're just not growing it as much as you'd like. We're not cutting anything. We're expanding, just less. And people don't always get that. And every chance we get to talk about that is good.
And I think this time the Republicans lost that philosophical wordplay battle because the Democrats were always saying cutting the budget. There was no budget that was getting cut. The only thing that happened is that Maggie Hassan wanted to raise the budget 12% by over $1 billion over what it was before.
So we would have had to have had
anything that doesn't meet her $1 billion plus budget increase was considered to be a cut by the Democrats. And I have to say, they hammered the Republicans, and the Republicans were horrible at the PR for not pointing
usual.
out. As
And
always,
they
they don't. They
would have needed $340 million in tax and fee increases to pay for everything that they wanted, in addition to downshifting costs, in addition to all the bills that were snuck into the budget. SB 124 was a bill that was snuck into Maggie Hassan's budget that we've had to pull out and vote on separately. That's what, that would have taken your probable cause hearing.
Yeah, but see, when you start talking about that, they hear a little bit about the taxes, and you start mentioning the SB 101, HB this, eyes glaze over. The basic problem was we didn't raise the budget.
Well,
actually, they ended up raising it. The Republicans did, but they were always in react mode rather than pro.
They were always playing defense when they should have been playing offense.
I think
saying, we'll give you a small increase, but we're not going to give away the entire store.
The simple way to phrase this is, this budget makes your taxes go up. Her budget would make them go up more. That's it. That's what it's going to cost you more money.
This budget at least doesn't increase. It doesn't actually downshift costs. It
still makes taxes go up. You have to get money from somewhere. There has to be money. You have to think simply.
Revenues are going up about $660 million over the 2 years. So what did they do? They spent everything we spent last year plus the $660 million. So they push it right to the limit and raided the rainy day fund and the RPS fund. So that's how they balance the budget, unfortunately.
Great. Once again, the party of limited government grows it.
All right, this is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson. We will be right back in the next segment for a lengthy legislative update. We're going to go over some details, talk about some bills and some other things. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse. Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK. 3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio, microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
All right, we are GrokTALK. I'd like to remind you that you can listen to this program live right now on Spreaker and Ustream, but then you'd know that, wouldn't you? And since you aren't, I will remind you that you can also listen on Stitcher, iTunes, Spreaker, iHeart, TuneIn, Tumblr, YouTube, Ustream, and more. So, no excuse not to listen to us. We have a scheduling change because I have all these people who help me do this, and we have a lot of last-minute try to get guests in to fill segments sometimes when we have the time available. And we got lucky because we have the awesome and amazing Pete, the tech guy, Pete and Jemmy, on the phone with us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and let me say that I was paid one of the great compliments that a blogger can be paid yesterday, while I was here at the First in the Nation Summit here in Nashua. A person came over to me and asked me if I was one of the Granite Grok crew. So you don't get much of a higher compliment than people thinking that you're part of Granite Grok, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, thank you very much.
And we're delighted to be confused with one of the best political journalists in the country. So a two-way win there, and we're looking forward to catching up with you tomorrow, too.
Well, I will do my best to be there. You should expect me.
Thank you. We'll make space. So, Pete, how is the First in the Nation going? And, how are the candidates showing themselves off? How is the party handling itself, so on and so forth? Anything you can say without being thrown out?
Well, one of the things I've been doing is I've been talking to a lot of state reps and state senators and the activists. And if you'll see my lead piece today about the real stars of the show, they are being solicited by every campaign in sight. The campaigns are going whole hog. In terms of political reporters, you might recall last year there was a room, plenty of space for people. Basically, there was a side room where people would sit down and do interviews. That room is now totally packed with press. Every time a candidate shows their face, a gigantic press scrum surrounds them, and it's very hard to get in to them. So I've kind of separated myself from the rest of the press onto another area and doing my work from there. But basically, it's a hard time for the candidates in one respect. It's hard to separate themselves because there's so many of them. So many of them are so well spoken that the trick becomes who can you buttonhole, and that's what I think this event is really about. Who can you buttonhole? So the candidates may be the stars, but the people that they want to attract are the real winners here.
Actually, you make a very good point, Pete, and this is Skip, and thanks for coming on the show. This is now the start of the first campaign, which is the campaign for the activists, because these are the folks that the campaigns themselves recognize. These are the influence makers. These are the people that the ordinary person who doesn't get involved in politics will turn to and say, well, what do you think of? And they expect the activists to know, what's going on, who's on what policy, and everything else like that. Plus, the campaigns would like to be able to have those names associated with their campaigns and not just be able to talk about those candidates, but also help out with the campaigns themselves to be a shining star.
It's the legwork. It's the people who are willing to volunteer and do the legwork who are the most important. And I was interviewing some activists like that yesterday who were saying that they've been hearing various speakers, and I was surprised to hear some support for Governor Gilmore of Virginia. I've had multiple people talk to me about him very favorably, and I did not expect that, including at least one state senator who was talking along those lines. From what people have told me, the most and what people have reacted, because obviously I'm here, Chris Christie impressed a lot of people, even those who disagreed with him, because he's very, very direct. And from what I can gather here, you have to come up with answers. You don't have to always have the answer that I agree with, so to speak, but you always have to be able to make your case and make it unafraid. If you're wishy-washy here, you're not going to get anywhere. That's the bottom line. You have to mean what you say if you want to get some of these activists going for you.
So what are you feeling from the activists? Who are they? You mentioned Gilmore, but do you find a number of people saying, well, I'm going to go with this person or that person, or are they all still sitting back saying, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to wait until I meet them all 4 or 5 times, and then I'll make a decision?
Most people are playing it very close to the vest. Just about everyone I've talked to has said that they've been approached by at least 4 campaigns.
Wow.
Sometimes as many as 6. and a lot of it's been quietly because nobody expects anyone to commit early. The interesting thing is I've talked to several of the Patriots Voices people who are big Santorum fans, and some of the representatives who are big Santorum fans, and they're basically waiting on Rick Santorum. If he goes in, they're with him, and if he doesn't, then they're going to make up their mind. Of course, the Rand Paul contingent is always big at events like this. He'll be speaking today, so that's going to draw a lot of national attention. But most people are playing their cards close to the vest. Nobody wants to make a commitment now and lock themselves out. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays.
Well, next question that begs the question: how do the campaigns know which activist to start asking? Because you said one person's been approached by 4 campaigns, another one 6. What's the scuttlebutt, or what are you seeing on the floor there that says the campaigns go mumble, 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 go talk to this person? How do they get to that point?
Well, the first thing they do is all you have to do is look at the little badges. There's so many state reps here in New Hampshire that if you're a representative, if you're wearing a state rep badge, someone is going to approach you. And if they're not approaching you out in front of everybody, they're approaching you in one of the more informal of moments. So you're a state rep, you're going to be known. There's nobody more popular than a Republican state rep in New Hampshire around election time with a field this big.
And how about the people who aren't in government? The people who just want to be activists, they've never run for office, they don't have the title. How does the campaign know about those folks?
Well, they look at who's associating with who. I mean, you can tell the people, the activists, by how they talk, by how they carry themselves. And these campaigns know what they're doing. I mean,
Scouting.
Some of the bigger ones have their people on the ground who've had their people on the ground for a while, so they've been trying to make connections. By the way, right now Rand Paul is speaking, and you're getting a crowd of press and a crowd of attention around him at the moment, right on the podium. You're going to see a huge press scrum in a few minutes as soon as he walks out. He's going to have a very hard time walking.
Do you need to go to that, or?
Well, I can go to it in a little bit, but
okay.
Granted, Groks, you guys are the man. I'm going to stick with you as long as I can.
Well, thank you very much.
We got you for a few more minutes.
And often we would be at these things, but we're not exactly in lockstep with the state party these days, and we decided there was enough to cover that we'd be covering it from the studio.
Well, it's ironic you mentioned that because the last interview I did yesterday was with Scott Brown, and the senator was kind enough to give me some of his time. And I've been very hard on Senator Brown, and I want to really compliment him that he was kind enough to give me time at the end of the day. And he said something very, very intelligent. As a person who campaigned and lost in New Hampshire, says you got to go in there, you got to visit the grassroots, you got to go and buttonhole people individually at these small events if you expect to have a chance in New Hampshire. And while he was not as successful as he would like, that advice is still the best advice around. People expect you to sell yourself to them. You can't sit back and just hope for the air war to win the game.
Yeah,
it's like Iraq. New Hampshire is like Iraq in that you cannot win with an air war alone.
No.
If you're going to win, you have to have a ground game.
Exactly, and of course he recorded ads. In fact, the ads probably hurt him more than they helped him. The time with the grassroots is probably the most valuable. And I'm looking at the quote that you've got on your blog here. If you want to win in New Hampshire, you have to do the legwork and have an in with the local activists and voters. If you don't manage it, you won't get very far. I think that's very wise words from a guy who actually suffered a little bit from that strategy. And you know what? I ran into him last night, and he was exceedingly gracious. This is the guy that always asks after Mama and says, I'm praying for her, and then winks and says, but not for you, though.
Well, I mean, you can disagree. One of the things that people forget is that you can disagree with a lot of people and not be disagreeable, and you can like people and just think that they're wrong on an issue or two. I mean, my sister votes Democrat. That doesn't mean I don't like her. She just happens to be wrong. can't crucify him for being wrong.
No, you can't. And it's an excellent piece. And by the way, folks, while we have Pete on, some of the best political journalism out there, thetechguyblog.com, and he has a tip jar, and he's entirely reader-supported. We're kind of self-supported with a few generous donations that buy us equipment from time to time. Peter is reader-supported, and if you like what you read, you know what to do.
And I would especially note that we also have our Magnificent Seven bloggers who are all over the country. Fausta Wirtz, award-winning blogger down in Louisiana. We have Pat Austin. We have Marathon Pundit who writes for us. We have some great writers, and these writers aren't free writers. We're paying all of these writers who are writing for us. So if you like what you read at the Tech Guy blog, if you can hit the tip jar, we can continue to provide you with the good writers. I can continue to do the work, and if we get enough, I can do some legwork not only around here but around the country.
Or do like me and take out a monthly subscription, even a little low amount. It all helps to keep the finances of the blog on an even keel.
Well, it adds up, and it's a question I've asked many times. You can either have the mainstream media and the filter, or you can have citizen journalism. And in fact, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I had interviewed one person. They asked about, well, how will this be edited? And I said, I don't edit these videos. I do the short 3-minute interviews. I give people the chance to say their opinions. I don't pull ambushes because I don't believe in ambushes. I will make my point later, and you can make your point now. And I trust my readers to come up with it. And remember, the media will try and spin you. I'm going to give you what's there, and I trust your opinion. And that's Granite Grok all over.
Yeah, exactly. We don't cut the videos, except maybe just a little noise at the beginning or end. Everything the candidate or panel or whatever says is included in full, unless there's a technical fault. I mean, we do everything we can to present the complete discussion, statement, whatever, and let the readers decide.
Now, Pete, didn't I notice that you were writing at Watchdog Arena?
Yes, you did. In fact, we had a post that went a bit viral on tax illiteracy. I do my own taxes, and it's appropriate that we're talking about this considering the day. It's the 18th of April. Mm-hmm. When we had the original American Revolution, the protest was no taxation without representation. Right now, we have taxation without understanding. Too many people do not understand the tax code, and if you are taxing people without their understanding, it's the same thing as not having representation. You cannot. You need to know how the system works. Otherwise, you're going to end up with tyranny. And I'm sorry, I want to know how I'm being taxed. I want to see these forms. I want to know what's going on. And the more complicated your tax system, the less likely you're going to understand it. And that actually plays to big government. That plays to those who want to manipulate the system. The more complicated tax code just invites trouble. And that's an issue that I think is very, very important that I'd like to see more people address here.
Well, Pete, I am writing there as well, and I hope you look for my stuff and share it. I will do the same. We've come to the end of the segment, and I want to thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us today.
Well, thank you for having me. And again, the techguyblog.com is the site, and I'll be looking forward to seeing some of you guys tomorrow.
All right, great, Pete. We'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy.
And enjoy the show.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Welcome back to Grok Max Abramson's here. Mike Rogers, Skip Murphy. Thanks to Pete and Jimmy. Of course, Carly Fiorina and Jorge Mesa Tejada, who was on earlier. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook or Twitter. Look for Granite Grok. Like us, share us, and invite people to come and see what we see what we write. Sometimes we talk about what we read. That wasn't a total screw-up of a statement. And listen to the program, please, because I think we provide value to the discussion, and we want to continue to do that now. Max was bringing up an interesting point in the break, and I'd like you to revisit it, sir.
We voted on the budget a couple of weeks ago, and normally the Republican Party's been divided. The Democrat-appointed Speaker has been dividing the Republican Party, of course, and I think that has kind of started to fizzle out. There was a complete fiasco over the budget. Jasper's budget would have had an 8-cent per gallon gas tax increase, which would have hurt businesses, hurt our economy, and kept people from buying gas here. And I think that the split happened, and I think enough Republicans have finally broken away from Jasper, and I think maybe even Jasper and his people have kind of given up the ghost on trying to push the Democrat agenda, because I think that pattern's been seen. And what happened during the budget session was the regular platform Republicans, the O'Brien, Carol Maguire, Leon Rideout, Pam Tucker Republicans, put together a budget that could pass, because Jasper found, and Jasper and Flanagan, Flanagan's the majority leader in the House, although not the elected majority leader, they found they only had about 50 votes on the floor out of 400 reps, and so there was no chance of that. There was no chance of that budget passing through the House. So the platform Republicans had to get together, and unfortunately on the floor of the House we had to put a budget together out there in broad daylight. Normally it's all done in caucus. Some people don't like it being done in caucus, but when you're making sausage, you kind of have to just roll up your sleeves and go do it. So the Republican Party has come together in the House. Finally, this Wednesday was the first day ever. It was a short session, 90 minutes, and in pushing the red button and the green button, Democrats have finally gotten frustrated. They are seeing the Republican Party in the House vote Republican. Now, there are narrow majorities on some of these bills. One was 168 to 164.
So every person's vote counts.
Yes. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 votes on the floor. No, we've had more than that. We've had almost half a dozen votes on the floor that came down to about 4 votes or less. So every single state rep race matters. Even the vote initially, the vote between Jasper and O'Brien, if O'Brien had gotten 3 more state representatives there voting for O'Brien, O'Brien would be Speaker, and we would have a real Republican working majority. But now I think people have seen that Jasper and Flanagan really are just pushing the Democrat agenda.
Go on, after you.
Quick question. With all the votes going on, and you just piqued my interest here, the red button, green button, how many of the actual votes on legislation are being recorded versus those that are just voice votes?
Only a handful now are roll called. We usually have 3 or 4, sometimes 5 roll call votes a day. The Democrats behind me and surrounding me are constantly complaining about these roll call votes, and they're speaking out of order. You're not supposed to gripe and complain and speak while we're in the voting mode, and they're doing it during the debate also. They're complaining about all these roll call votes. They keep calling for roll call votes. The platform Republicans are voting for these roll call votes over and over again, and they complain and complain and complain. But we have to do it. If it's a Republican platform issue or something on the gold standard, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance group, you're going to have someone calling for a roll call every time, and they know that they're going to have it, and they gripe anyway.
And what are they griping about? What specifically are they saying about having to push the button?
They complain that, it costs money, and, it takes time, and we have to wait a minute for members to come back into the floor of reps and take their seats. They complain every single time. It's amazing. It's the same Democrats doing it every time.
Yeah, they just don't want to be held accountable, though. None of that
right.
other stuff.
They don't want the folks back home to know how Democrats are voting.
Do they actually ever say, we have to be put on the record? Then they don't like. They do say that?
They hate that. They hate that because they're not voting pro-labor. They're not really even voting progressive like a Teddy Roosevelt progressive. They're voting for big, top-heavy, centralized government, more taxes, more fees, more spending, more controls, any attempt to make life a little bit easier for New Hampshire small business community. They're voting the wrong way every single time. Not every time, but most of them are voting the wrong way every time. And the Democrats, This is why I didn't run as a Democrat. I wanted to represent my district. Also, I don't agree with their big government approach. I wanted to represent my district. But if you run as a Democrat, you have to vote the way leadership tells you. Otherwise, the union officials and lawyers and all those quote-unquote progressive socialists, they will show up and they'll primary you, and if you win your primary, they'll switch over and they'll vote for the Republican to get rid of you. They keep out every single member of the party who doesn't vote straight big government.
So why is it works that way and it doesn't work for Republicans? You know, I've mentioned before the party whip system in Britain, which is not just that there is a whip who's supposed to round up the cats and get them to vote. There is also the strictness of the whip, a 1-line, 2-line, or 3-line whip that says this issue is really, really important to the party. But there's also the condition known as withdrawing the whip from a member, which says you are no longer supported by the party. Clearly the Democrats do that. So if you vote against the Democrats, if you vote against the equivalent of a 3-line whip in the New Hampshire House as a Democrat, you are going to be out of there. You're going to be unsupported by the party next election. The Republicans have no such concept, whether you discuss it in archaic British terms or simply in practical politics. The Democrats insist you vote the party line, or at the very least, you vote right when they tell you. The Republicans don't do that. They don't seem to have any concept of this is important to the party. This is our platform, our principles, and we expect you to come our way.
If you took the average educated, involved, ordinary person who is not part of the two-party system, they're an independent, and you took that independent, educated voter who knows about the issues and knows something about economics and business issues, and you put them in there, they would vote the Republican platform probably 80 to 85% of the time. So what we're asking from the Republican platform isn't anything big or extreme. What we're simply asking, anyone should get a 90% voting record. Anyone should get at least an 85% voting record.
So how is it that you can have Republicans with 40% voting records?
Because Jasper and Flanagan are leaning on them to push the Democrat agenda. And what they have found, after Jasper pulled Lori Sanborn off the Finance Committee for refusing to vote for an 8-cent per gallon gas tax increase, his credibility with the party really fell. Now, all the chairs and vice chairs have been told, and we know they've been told because we all talk. And if they vote against Jasper and Flanagan 3 times, they get pulled. Lori Sanborn only voted against them once, and that was on that gas tax increase. She refused to support the gas tax increase. She was pulled off the committee. She was reassigned to another committee. But seeing so many conservative platform Republicans pulled off their committees, even committee chairs, right at the start of the session and shifted off to less important committees, really put a lot of fear and concern into them. And so we've seen representatives like was it Phil Bright? We've had plenty of conservatives who had 80 and 90% voting records suddenly drop to 60%. We've most of the chairs and vice chairs fall somewhere between 40 and 55%. So they're actually voting with the Democrats. The Democrats vote with us 30 or 40% of the time. So to see good conservative, pro-freedom, pro-liberty Republicans having so much pressure put on them, so concerned about their parking spot, that they are driven down to vote Democrat, to vote against the Republican platform and against the Republican primary.
There's a piece right there. They're so afraid of losing their parking spot because they don't want to walk down the street a little way.
Well, they're going to lose their
park
parking
free
spot.
Or die.
They're going to lose
or die.
They're going to lose their store's parking garage parking spot because we're roll calling these votes. And the people back home are they're reading in the paper now. My paper, the Hampton Union, publishes the roll called votes. So they praised me for voting 99% of the time, which most representatives don't vote 99% of the time. Most don't even vote 90% of the time. I wish they would vote 100% of the time, but especially if they vote with us. But the voters now are seeing the roll call votes, and we're voting on the big issues that people pay attention to: Common Core, Obamacare, the budget, tax increases, fee increases, gun rights, property rights. They're seeing those votes published in the paper, and people are starting to ask, why are some of these Republicans voting with the Democrats all the time?
And
they're voting the wrong way.
Because they're just being short-sighted, which is what a lot of them are. It's about the power and the privilege, and it's not about the people. It's the same problem we see in Washington. They will do anything to maintain their power and privilege, and relatively little to actually serve the voters.
I consider myself to be a pro-labor moderate.
Yeah.
I come from a very union district, and even the non-union folks are very much into labor issues and so forth. My voting record is still over 90%. So if I can get over 90%, anyone should be able to get 90%. There's absolutely no reason, unless you're a raving, hyper-emotional lefty loony, there's no reason to get less than 90% on the HRA platform. And there's no reason to be voting against the gold standard either. Gold standard is the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and that's your personal freedom issues and your constitutional rights. Those are basic constitutional issues. Those are basic, fundamental due process rights. Nobody should be getting a poor score on the gold standard.
Right, and it's like the Republican platform. It's eminently reasonable and pro-liberty, and it's exactly what representatives should be voting for, and the party won't even stand up for it.
And it's nothing controversial like, I don't know, legalizing hookers for Hillary or something like that. It's nothing far out like that. It's all very reasonable stuff that, once you explain the issue to people, 90+% of the people are going to be with you 90% of the time, and yet we have people running as Republicans, and what are they doing? They're voting with the Democrats because Jasper's telling them to. Or you lose your parking spot.
So where is the potential for a vote of no confidence here? It sounds to me...
We don't have time.
Okay, sorry.
Unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
We're going to get... That's a good question, but we have Kevin Bloom in the next segment, and we can come back and talk about that.
Can I mention SB 101?
Quick, you got about 10 seconds.
SB 101 passed. We were really concerned about it. I guess leadership just withdrew their position on it, and so we were able to get it passed. So Common Core is now, unless Maggie Hassan vetoes it, optional for school boards in New Hampshire. We've got local control again.
We'll be right back.
Great.
Stay tuned.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Jean Shaheen and her allies are making false claims about her record on veterans. The truth? Shaheen refused to meet with veterans pushing for reform. She wasn't on the committee that wrote the reform legislation and refused to co-sponsor important VA reforms in the VA Management Accountability Act until after the VA scandal broke. When our veterans needed her, Jean Shaheen was AWOL. Tell Jean Shaheen to stop distorting the truth and fix the VA.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. If you have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALK.
I kind of like it when I walk into a Friday and I only have 2 guests booked, and before the show's over, all the segments are filled. That's the best. Welcome back to Grok Talk. I'm Steve McDonald here with Max Abramson, Skip Murphy on my left, Michael, way at the end of the table down there, Mr. Rogers, eating his apple. And on the phone we have Kevin Bloom. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Steve.
How you doing?
Just great. I'm down at the gun show in Concord at the Everett Arena right now, which is going to be going on today and tomorrow. So I'm sure many of your listeners are already here.
Some of them probably are, yes. And
there is so much going on this weekend. There's things competing for their attention all weekend long.
All right, so we wanted to. I'm part of this Facebook IM thing and talking about SB 30, and I'll be sitting there next to my laptop, and I'll start hearing my phone go ping, ping, ping as messages start pouring in. You sent me some information. I didn't have time to go over it, so let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, I don't know how far you've gotten with Max, or if he
we haven't touched it yet. We haven't had a chance.
Oh, good. It's like virgin turf.
But Max is sitting right next to me, so.
Yeah, and SB 30. Hi, Max.
How are you doing?
Is coming up on Tuesday for a hearing, and it's going to be in Reps Hall at 1 o'clock. And the local paper up north is promoting it heavily, and they're asking all their supporters to show up and demand that the state finance this project. And so we need people, your listeners, to show up and say, no, you shouldn't steal money from me for this boondoggle, and if it's worth doing, it's worth doing by the private sector. Now, Republicans have said for some time that it's not really fair to steal money from the rich and give it to the poor, but it's a pretty tough angle to argue you should steal from the poor and give to one rich guy.
Now, have you read the amended version? The amended version is very different.
I indeed have read the latest amendment that I have that specifically sets out, and this bill has gone through so many different changes. Even in the Senate, when it came out, it was originally set up as a study committee. So, let's not worry about that. Then, the last second on the floor, Senator Forrester put in a floor amendment that said, we're going to give the county the authority to tax set up tax districts in any unincorporated areas. So if you're not in a city, and you're wondering about how your taxes are going to be figured out, that's going to be done by your county, which previously the counties have not had an awful lot to do with pretty much anything.
Which is a
so
good
you
thing.
might not like that. But now that one got, they sent it to the House that way, and of course there was no public hearing on the floor amendment, and then it went to the House, and then they decided, we're going to change it, and we'll make it do everything we want it to do, because the floor amendment basically just said that. It said that counties can set up and tax unincorporated areas. Now, then it moved on to the House, and they said, we're going to move it out of the committee. They vacated it last week in session and moved it to the Finance Committee. And that sort of makes sense because, in a way, they're basically saying that we're putting the full faith and credit of the taxpayers of New Hampshire behind this thing. And you're on the hook for $28 million. And they're not even going to, first of all, they're not going to let you stay free there for that. At the Balsams, and we are talking about the Balsams bailout, you're not going to get any free nights just because you help pay for it. And they're not even going to take you out for dinner or give you a little kiss first, It's straight to the we're going to rob you. So,
not even a hot dog.
No, and there's a lot of things about, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take 15,000 gallons of water a day out of the river end. We're going to, there are many, many objections to this, and I'm just to summarize them. Well, I was thinking we could go to the Constitution and say, the New Hampshire Constitution says that it's set up for the people of New Hampshire and not for any one man or any collection or family of people.
Article 10.
And it does say that, so yeah.
It's
Isn't that
a clear
Article 10?
violation. Then we could go to the Word of God and say, thou shalt not steal. And I think that one fits right in. And we could have put that one first, but it doesn't really matter because I think that some of the legislators will ignore both of those things. And let's move straight into it's a dumb idea. The reason that the place is vacant goes way back many years. There has been a lawsuit that said essentially that the owners sold it to somebody who made no down payment at all. It was a secret deal, and I think you have some of that stuff. I am not in front of it. I'm sitting on a rock next to the river at this point in time, but you probably have the details of the lawsuit there if you're in front of you. And that alleged that this deal was put through with the connivance of the Attorney General at the time, I believe it was 2012, and that was done at Thanksgiving. And it was done in secret. If anybody had been allowed to take a look at this, they would have said, this is nuts. I mean, how do you buy a supposed property that's supposed to be worth $140, $150 million, and you do it with no money down? That's a pretty good deal to pull off, and you have to be pretty well connected. Now, to add insult to injury, not only are we going to approve this, but then we're going to ask the New Hampshire taxpayers to pay for it. How much worse can we get? And if you look at the character of the people that are doing this, that are on the benefit of this deal, just Google them. You don't have to take my word for any of this. Google them, and you can see that maybe you would decide to loan this guy $100. I don't think I would.
Well,
and I just want people to make their own decision.
Yeah, and those
okay.
names.
And by the way, this place supposedly has a toxic latex refuse waste dump in one corner.
Oh, really?
And the town doesn't want them to sever that from the property in case it becomes a permanently abandoned waste dump.
Ah, yes. Well,
and
the story gets better and better.
And that's compromising their ability to raise money. Our Bulldog reporter, Kimberly, is all over this. In fact, she's finding so much stuff, she's barely begun to publish because there's so much more research to do.
Exactly. It gets, the more you peel this onion,
the more your eyes
water.
water.
The more layers you get. Yeah, the more you start to cry.
And
you start crying right away.
And it's the taxpayers' eyes that will water. And as you say, you don't even get a free night or a free bag of chips when you go to visit.
Right.
Yep.
And another commentator who lives in the area said this: the reason for that, one of the other reasons that it's deserted, it's hard to get to, and he was saying to get there you have to fly into the Berlin airport, and then it's a 60-minute drive from the airport, and most people can't make it to the small airport there. So it's a 3-hour drive through 2-lane roads with a lot of frost heaves. It's not like this place is easy to get to.
So this is Skip Kevin. So this Les Otten, it is Otten, right?
I believe so, but I'm not sitting in front of them.
Yeah, we got to get the names up again. So as Kevin said, Google these guys.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up the article in the New Hampshire Constitution shall not be for a single person, and yet that's exactly what SB 30 is supposed to be doing. And
yes.
Against the backdrop of, well, we need jobs up there. We need jobs up there.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody told these chuckleheads in the legislature that are pushing this bill to give taxpayer money to this absolutely, pump and dump kind of guy, or so it seems,
you're giving one guy a job.
Yeah, but for how long? Has anybody pointed out that this would be unconstitutional and that they're going to be subject to a lawsuit if somebody really who has a few bucks to throw around actually brings suit?
I think that Skip, you and I have been to the legislature many times, and when did you ever go up there and make any constitutional argument that had got any traction or cut any ice whatsoever? I'm going to say never in my years that I have been there. That's just not one that goes along. It's like, let's spend somebody else's money. That one flies.
I was hoping, don't burst my bubble so quickly. I can't hope for hope.
We're going to sue is slightly more effective, I think, and I would hope somebody would. I've been kind of disappointed in a lot of there have been a lot of opportunities to file suit over quite an awful lot of bills that have passed the legislature or failed to pass to correct injustices. So it depends. I think. I do have a really good lawyer now, who is interested in pursuing this, and at rock bottom rate. So we'll have to talk about that later.
All right. Well, that's cool. So Tuesday at 1 p.m., Reps Hall, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you can bring your constitutional arguments if you want, but
bring popcorn because it'll be fun.
What was the $15 million bailout? It was a $15 million subsidy or loan guarantee for some type of travel service that the state was on the hook for. That business went under. This wasn't even very long ago. The state gave a $15 million loan guarantee to this little travel service.
Well, that's so you can buy your own jet and get out of the country with as much of the rest of the money as you can carry, I would think.
Lovely.
I'm going to buy my own cruise liner for that.
They should just give them our GGI money. I mean, we use it for everything else.
Why don't they give us $28 million? Because I think if they did that for everybody, wouldn't that balance out?
We would be much more effective at using that money than anybody else they could give it to, I think.
For $26 million, we could get back the $26 million in federal funds that we left on the table with the last budget. I'd rather do that. At least get $26 million back.
We can promise to on loose living.
Hookers for Hillary.
We'll stimulate the economy. Think how many jobs that would put in the economy, huh?
Yeah.
We could just do the town and bar crawl, and we could use that up in a certain period of time.
I know a lot of micro businesses would be very happy for you to do a town and bar crawl too. That's really stimulating jobs.
Indeed.
Hey, Kevin, here's a quote for you as far as your remark about did you ever know of anybody up on the State House following the Constitution? This is from New Hampshire State Representative Sandra Keynes. I don't try to justify anything by the Constitution. It's not my job, and I don't want to do it. New Hampshire State Representative Deborah D. Simone, the Constitution is a guideline.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't mention okay, I haven't. Maybe I wasn't.
As it was in the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm. There are some reps, and I wasn't saying that no reps follow the Constitution. I have never seen I've never heard it an argument fly that a bill didn't pass or was passed because of the constitutional argument. But I do want to say that there are many very good reps that really do follow the Constitution. I want to say I can't even think of them all, but there are. I'm thinking at least 120 or so in the House. So that's good, and I don't mean to impugn.
Oh no, I think the context in which you said it was very clear. It had to do with people using that argument in the context of a hearing, and was that influential in its outcome? I don't have any doubt that our listeners understood that, but it's always good to clarify because there's people out there who are listening who might cherry pick that comment for their own best interests, and that's how it works.
What, like the guy that got right in Chris Christie's face yesterday?
Yeah, that was a great picture, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, look, the tracker.
Yeah. If Matt Mowers read the Granite Grok, he would know a tricky tracker troll from American Bridge when he found one.
Have you seen the picture of Jeb Bush standing right next to Jasper?
No.
I don't know why Jasper's going and meeting all these Republican candidates. He's just... they had the picture with Marco Rubio, and the meme said, "Marco, we hardly knew ye."
Well, there's a thing. If anybody's got that picture of Jeb Bush next to Jasper, we can put the little rhyme from Jungle Book underneath it.
Maybe it's a Forrest Gump thing. He just shows up in these pictures with all these famous people.
I want to be like you, hoo-hoo.
And if any of Rand Paul's staff or bodyguards are listening to this, please keep Jasper away from Ron Paul. Thank you, or Rand Paul. Either one. That's just inappropriate, and let's not have that.
All right, Kevin, we're all done with you. You're done with us. You can go back to your gun show, get off your rock, and and enjoy the view you've got. Wait, what?
Just quick. Are you selling or just browsing?
I actually am buying. So yeah, I was just browsing, and I finally had to get something. So.
It's hard to browse and not buy. All right, Kevin, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. We'll see you. All right, we'll be right back in a couple of minutes. We'll take a quick break, and we will close up the show.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
we are GrokTALK. We are back. Thanks again to CNHT, the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, for allowing us to use the space. Visit them at cnht.org. Don't do net or com, do org. And get updated on all the latest in municipal policy, rules, changes, right to know, voter fraud, all kinds of good stuff. And thanks for the space. We have Mr. Rogers, we have Mr. Abramson, and Mr. Murphy at the table. I am Steve McDonald, and we have 13 minutes left. What are we going to do with them?
And we escaped from Murphy's Law in the nick of time at 08:59 when Skip's PC burst into life.
Yeah. Yes. And one more follow-up quote for Mr. Kevin Bloom. New Hampshire State Representative Susan Almy talking about being constitutionally minded. Well, you don't get to decide what's constitutional, and I don't get to decide what's constitutional. The judiciary decides what's constitutional. A prime example of an individual basically saying, it's not my job, Bon, when it should be all of our jobs. It's my job. It's your job. It's his job. It's his job to decide what's constitutional. And then to tell our elected reps, this is constitutional.
Before you do that. Mike had a phone call, had to go quick. All right. I'm looking for something that Mike brought up. So anyway, go ahead and keep talking. We haven't even touched half the stuff we were going to talk about with you, Max.
Oh, good gravy. We had...
we could do 2 hours.
I wouldn't even know where to begin. We've been talking about election laws. Let me think. Gosh, what have we had come up? HB 323,
which
was a very good bill that would have made state and federally mandated testing optional. Unfortunately, Chairman Ladd, who is also a Jaspercrat and has heard us many, many times in many, many ways, went right to the floor without a debate and put an amendment on the floor. He did this with HB 276 and he did it with HB 323, both local control bills. He showed up with a floor amendment. No one had had time to read it, hadn't been debated, hadn't been vetted in committee. There was no public hearing. And on voice, Jasper had him on voice votes in both cases and just did the yay and nay. I think on one of them there were as many people saying nay as yay, and he still called it a yay. So he, in amending these good Republican bills, they're defeating a lot of good Republican bills by amending it on the floor. They did the same thing with, although they amended in Judiciary Committee, they amended the late-term abortion bill, which I think was 26 weeks. 2/3 of Americans believe, even pro-choice, that second trimester abortion should be banned or limited in most cases. 80% believe that third trimester abortions should be banned or limited in most cases. So 80% of Americans are with us on at least banning late-term abortions. 2/3 are with us even going back to the second semester, which is 13 weeks. We had a bill at 26 weeks. Horrigan and some of the others amended it in Judiciary. Horrigan's on Judiciary.
This would be Timothy Horrigan, erstwhile and often commenter at Granite Rock.
Mm-hmm. That's him.
But he's very civil.
He's
very well educated. He's very articulate, but he's very much on the left. And in this particular case,
just say it.
In this particular case, he spoke on the floor, and we ended up having to table our own pro-life bill. And it was just a very simple. 80% of Americans are with us. Third trimester abortions. That was it. Very reasonable. Everyone agrees with us except for the pro-abortion crowd. Now, there's a pro-choice crowd, there's a pro-life crowd, and there's a pro-abortion crowd. We've been finding we can get the pro-choice people to come over to the pro-life side on a few issues. Fetal homicide, taxpayer funding of abortion, taxpayer funding of advocacy, cooling off periods, informed parental consent. So on some of these issues requiring an ultrasound of the baby greatly reduces the number of abortions. When a woman is fully informed, especially a teenage girl, if she's fully informed, if she talks to her parents, if she gets the options, most of the time she does not have an abortion. So the pro-abortion crowd wants to take that information away from them. They want these teenage girls only going to a guidance counselor in the public schools who's pushing for them to have an abortion, even if they're not pregnant, which happened to a girl, I think she was 14 or 15. She went to see her high school guidance counselor, and very first thing that the guidance counselor said was, yeah, you need to have this abortion. And she said, well, I'm not even pregnant. It's just, It's so automatic. It's such a rubber stamp. So they're not pro-choice.
I
They're
want to know what college I
pro-abortion.
should go to. You need to have an abortion.
Is that the Hillary laugh?
No, that's the Jane Cormier laugh. It's
Oh.
not really her, but it sounds like her.
Yeah, it does. Jane's a wonderful. I wish.
Sounds much more like Jane than Hillary, which is a crackly cackle.
Yeah, Jane ran for state senate, almost unseated. What was it, Booten?
Putin. Yep.
Yeah.
Jane's terrific. She's a real Republican, and we were all rooting for her. Unfortunately, she came in just a little shy, and Booten had over $100,000.
Booten had the support of the state party. One of the nastiest and most incestuous things about the power club in Concord and in Washington is once you're on the inside, they'll all pitch in to keep you there, especially if you're one of the play-along types. In the U.S. Senate is perhaps the worst club in that respect, is that none of the members will really speak ill of the other members.
And
even when it's deserved.
When there is a contested primary, the state party needs to stay out. Unfortunately, they are routinely taking sides with these rhinos. They're not providing much support, or they're providing no support for conservatives. Kevin Navarre, John Reagan.
Yeah.
And they'll provide unlimited amounts of support to support the C and D rhinos.
We have one of the poster children for that very problem actually speaking tomorrow. Harry Reid very nearly got unseated by a good conservative 6 years ago, and that would be 8 years ago. That would be Sharon Angle, and she will be speaking. And the reason Sharon Angle didn't win, sure, she was a little inexperienced politically, but she was doing her best, and she was thoroughly committed to the task. The problem is that the Republican Party withdrew their support over some imagined faux pas. And rather than help shore up the finances and help fix any irregularities, they claimed irregularities that weren't there and backed away.
Now that always seems.
And she still got 45% of the vote. Can you imagine what could have happened if they'd actually pitched in?
Well, this is what happens with the Republicans, and we saw this in Indiana, over the last couple of weeks, that they refuse to stand up for principles, and then they wonder why people aren't voting for them. Afterwards, if you don't stand up to your principles, if you don't show that you're willing to stand up and fight for something, you end up fighting nothing. And people say, why should we bother when you won't stand up for us? And we've seen that here. We saw that here in New Hampshire in the Walt Havenstein race for governor and for U.S. Senate with Scott Brown. If you're not going to stand up for substantial parts of the party that truly believe in those issues, those people are going to stay home, or they're not going to vote for you. And we saw that they refused to vote in those two races.
Not very.
Havenstein wouldn't step away or disavow a controversial statement he'd made. Scott Brown doubled down on the pro-abortion vote with another ad, basically declaring himself to be to the left of Maggie Hassan on the topic. These problems are rife everywhere, and word to the wise to Governor Pence: don't bother. And I've been an admirer of the guy for 6 or 7 years since I first heard him speak. He speaks very well. He talks the talk. But when the chips were down in Indiana, when the usual activist came out and said religious freedom, that'll cause discrimination, instead of saying, no, this is just religious freedom, this is protection for people of conscience and nothing more, he caved and fixed the bill so that there is in fact no protection for the small business people anymore.
No, not for individuals. It seems to be the Obama meme of freedom to worship, which basically says you can worship within your church, you can worship as you like in your home, but come out to the public square, which is really what the First Amendment freedom of expression means. We're not going to see that anymore.
So can we arrest them when they come out yelling Allahu Akbar?
Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, right to peaceably assemble and
the right to peaceably not assemble. Freedom of association means I can choose who I do and don't do business with.
And yet those are understood rights that young people don't understand now.
No.
They have the lawyers. The Bar Association is what's pushing its version of social tolerance, and if you're not socially tolerant enough, they want to be able to sue everybody who has money, every business owner, every homeowner, everyone, just for quote-unquote discrimination.
And then they'll wonder why they can't buy a cake anywhere in the end.
Yeah, and this goes back to what we talked about with Carly Fiorina, which was the administrative state with the various regulations that now trump not only law, but our constitutional foundational law. And this is the thing that we've seen, that inversion of what used to be held highest, constitutionality, now become of no account whatsoever. This is part of the deep transformation of American culture.
Right. And, when you were talking about what the reps in the New Hampshire House were saying about the Constitution and about how they didn't consider it to be important, this is the perfect illustration of mind over matter. They don't mind, so the Constitution doesn't matter.
And unfortunately, our educational system, and I keep coming back to this bugaboo over and over again, our educational system is no longer teaching our young folks not only our real history, but the philosophy behind that history. And all they're being told is, well, we were founded by old white slavers, rich people.
Thank God for Rush Limbaugh and his series of books on the real revolution in American history that might reach some of these skulls full of mush before it's too late.
Were you trying to pull a quote?
I don't really know if I have time. I keep going back to Liberal Fascism by
Jonah Goldberg.
And one of the things you need to look up is Sorrell's Syndicalism. And there's a lot of good quotes about it. I don't have time to read it today. But what he basically says is that the issue is not nearly as important as the perception of the fight. It doesn't matter if you oppose gay marriage, or if you're in favor of gay marriage and somebody is against it. What matters is that you are willing to rise up against it, even if you don't give a damn. It's about the perception. It's about organizing. It's about getting people to stand up for something, even if they don't understand it. And that's what they do. That's what they do with the union members. That's what they do with their grassroots groups. That's what they do with their paid hacks.
That's why Jesse Jackson said of Obama, he's not down from the struggle. That was just before he said he was going to cut his nuts off.
Well,
what a way to end the show.
Can't have a show without the word nuts in it, can we?
We need to talk about these issues.
And by the way, these were squirrel nuts I was referring to.
Okay, well, we're out of nuts. We have to go. Thank you so much for another week of GrokTALK. Next week, we will be back with more news, more politics, and more GrokTALK. See you later.
Yeah, baby! When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results.
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change.
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our health care coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpack.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
All of the music on this program comes to us through Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, or anyone else for that matter.